All right, welcome to the Conquest Corner. On this particular episode, we are going to start going through the updates for the Wadrhun. This is a bit delayed from where I wanted it to be. I wanted to get all this done before, but life, gaming, and both good and bad got in the way, and this is where we're at now. So, over the next short little bit, you will see all the different Wadrhun updates. No, it's better without the light on. We are going to be doing the same way we did the Nords, that we are going to be breaking it down by essentially unit type. And for the type of this, what we're going to look at is the tribes. So much like the Nords were broken down into half-bloods, exalted, immortals, you have the same sort of idea here. And we are going to start with the tribes. Keep in mind, if you want anything of this or any of the other factions for Conquest, we do have a discount code in the show notes below. It's Train Kickers. It saves you 10%, helps us out as well, and make sure that we can keep bringing you a variety of content related to this and a bunch of other things that I'm hoping to be able to do. This week should be much, much less crazy compared to last week. No 12 to 14 hour days of work. So instead, a bunch of hours to doing this and painting things, although they're all at the front of the house right now. All right, so let's get into it. So for anyone who hasn't watched one of these before, the new is on the left, the old is on the right, and we are going to be talking through, we're going to talk through the basic army rule change. I'll be doing in-depth enough for you to understand it, but we're not going to go through all the nuance of it. The goal of this is to discuss the different changes in the units, the good, the bad, and otherwise of it, how I think we might use them now, and other pieces like that. I will say Wadrhun are one of the armies I do not play. I've to one extent or another have played every other army. This is one I have not. I feel pretty confident in my thoughts, but if anyone who's super crazy about Wadrhun has different thoughts, if you're watching this on YouTube, put it in the comments. I'd like to hear and see those sort of things, especially because this is my impressions, and I'm always interested to see other people's impressions, as long as we're semi-decent about it. But same way, I'm not gonna be mean about it. Hopefully you won't either. So they have overhauled Chance. They talked about changing it greatly. I don't know if I would say it's changed greatly. What I would say is or if you were confused by Chance before, you're probably still to an extent confused, although I think it's been cleaned up, at least in explanation. I don't know if it's been made easier in terms of processing. I'll probably maybe shortly tell this anecdote in each one of them. My one friend who picked up this army, you would have seen some of his pictures in the past, because I used his thumbnails in the past because he's a painter. But he picked them up because that's orcs. Orcs, that's a nice and easy faction. I like orcs. I want to be able to brush at something. That'll be fun. And they found that he picked up the most complicated faction. They still might be. Realistically, I think they probably still are. But they made it a little bit easier. So the big thing for Chance now, for broad strokes differences, there are less tiers. There's only 2 tiers, so rather than the 3 tiers, it still requires 2 markers or 3 markers, so there's no fanatic level, although your unit might have chant things on it as well. So essentially what they did is they said, well, the way we did chants meant that we had to be really careful about what we did because of what we could give to theoretically just about anyone, which meant the units had to be more restricted what happened to them because, yeah, I can't give them too good of this because they might have all these extra bonuses from the chants. So what they did is they effectively have toned down the chants overall, but then they allowed to go to the units. Whether that's enough or not's another thing entirely. You can still, when you get your 3 markers, a regiment goes off, they'll chant, and then they chant the battle cry. You can exchange the conquest markers for other types if you want. Then you count up how many you got of it, and that's the thing that happens for that unit for the rest of the round. For famine, death, and war, the first tier is always the same, which makes it kind of meh. It's something, but it's nothing to write home about at all, where the previous tier did potentially a lot of crazy stuff. But now it's just, hey, your command stands 1 extra for purposes of seizing, as long as they're not light. They don't let the lights have a seizing stand by this, so that hurts Wadrhun players, obviously. Conquest, the tier actually does something extra. First March getting +2. You used to get more. It used to give you +3, but hey, at least it's still a bonus. Your tier 2s are what are different. So if you're famine, you're getting 2 extra inches on the charge. Helpful. Death gives you untouchable. War gives you cleave 1. Cleave 1 is actually quite nice. And Conquest gives you +2 to your evade, but to a maximum of 2. You have a good amount of units that don't really have much evade or no evade, so helpful. What I will say, just without going into more detail right now, you don't get nearly as much out of it in general, but the units could potentially help make up for it, and we'll see what happens in the future. I do think now, as a person playing against Wadrhun, you'll understand it more, because all you really got to listen to is what I tell you for the tier 2, because that's what I'm aiming for. And specifically, I'm going to kind of aim for it on certain units instead of not just everyone. I've seen some people say like, oh, I'm doing this and I'm going to trigger it on my Raptor Riders kind of thing. So just look for that. So I think that helps. But I think for the player itself, you're going to be able to make your decisions a little bit easier, but you're not going to like nearly as much of what you do. War used to give you things like extra resolve and cleave and all of that and loose broken, and you're not having that base anymore. So it is what it is. The cult just mentions the fact that if your warlord is a particular cult, then you get to have 2 of that chosen of that cult, and your warlord and the regiment they're in are that cult, whether it's war, death, famine, or conquest. Easy enough. I said we are going to be taking a look at the tribes. So that's a particular spot. So the first tribe is the matriarch. So let's take a look at her particular warlord traits. Matriarch is quite different. She's quite different because, one, there's no more fanatic sort of level, in terms of what it used to do, at least. She used to be able to get extra draw events, and she got the matriarch walks. Let's you make someone fanatic within range. Or right there. What it does now is when a regiment chants the battle cry anywhere on the battlefield of any cult. So when someone actually chants, they lose broken. There used to be a chant that would remove it. Now you just lose broken when you chant. Always active, of course. The other one is that once per battle, all regiments have their command stands be +2 for the purposes of seizing objective zones. That one does not, count as +2 stands for the purpose of seizing. So that one doesn't have the light restriction like we saw in the other spot. So I try not to read too much on the different groups to see the good and bad, because I want to have my own impressions. And I am going to take some of these impressions without having done the deep dives through everything else. I do think she's good. I know she's not the sort of option a lot of people take. What I will say, though, is I think you can do a lot of things that aren't the most competitive that are still good and can have fun with. You have to talk to your sort of play groups. I think the matriarch can do a lot of good for you. I think what she has is very nice. However, yeah, if you're trying to like compete very well, that's probably not going to do it for you. But let's talk about the matriarch herself. All right, for this matriarch queen, she's still sitting at 100 points. Move on characters is all gone because now they move the same as the unit. They've streamlined that nicely. Stats-wise, she's not changing. She has cleave now, no longer has the inspiring presence. She had the draw event was still last breath. Now they just put it here. With a non-monster regiment within 10 inches, gets to heal 4. And you can only be targeted once per round with the ability. I think it would have been fine if they let her heal the monsters per se. I think that makes it more interesting. I think that makes it where you'd probably see her more. I think you'll see them, but I think that's fine. I think it would have been fine the other way as well, personally. And you gain Indomitable for the unit you're in. Okay. For what she can take, doesn't look to be anything different. And of course, single artifact, everyone can take a mastery, so they just spell it out a little bit better here. They specifically mentioned that. Haven't seen anyone who can't. You liked her before, you liked her the same. For all the changes they made, she ain't one of it. Okay, for the tribes, next one up, we're going to get to the chieftain. All right, for the chieftain, we are sitting at the same amount of points. We are sitting at the identical stats. He's cleave 2 with flurry. He used to be cleave 2, so now he does get to do the rerolls. That does help quite a bit, because you obviously have the chieftain instead, part of speakers, but you have a chieftain instead that can go with a little bit different rules, but go on Triceratops. Here's your guy on foot. Veterans will get flurry. So it used to be potentially the unit that you're in, which might not have been veterans, but now your veterans do get flourished, so they're pushing you to take more veterans. I think that's fine. I overall have no problem with the fact that, okay, this is a chieftain. He cares more about bringing his vets. They are better prepared, so that is who he buffs more. And Crushing Force. When a friendly tribe's regiment within 10 inches of the character stand chants the battle cry, gets impact +2. So if you're actually chanting, now you're going to be able to impact a good bit more. And when a friendly, from within 10 inches of this character stand chants, it gains that. So yeah, it's the whole regiment gains the +2. So it could be a big buff. Absolutely. Tempo, your tribe regiments that this character warband gain Vanguard. So, anyone whose tribe's in here, which your mainstay has it, not necessarily so much you're restricted. If your mainstay, you get Vanguard, you'll get further up the board. Compared to what he did before, you used to be spending points on a few different things, or you could spend points on a few different things. What it used to do before, gain Indomitable, and then they become Conquest instead. I don't know. So for what he has now, if we're going to talk about him, we should talk about his Warlord trait, which we did not. My apologies. I'm doing the Warlord traits as we come across the characters related to it. Overall base things, I think the Chieftain's fine. I know this is an overall rework. What the Chieftain used to do was any infantry and monsters got shock while he was on the battlefield. They separated it because it used to be that everything did. Now, essentially, the Thunder Chieftain helps out the Cavs and Brutes. The Chieftain helps out the infantry and monsters. That's what it was. What it is now, the range of his Crushing Force changes to cover the entire battlefield. Furthermore, his tempo now affects all friendly infantry tribes units in this army. So, his Crushing Force, let's take a look. That was the one with the extra impact. Now that happens much easier. And all tribes gain Vanguard. Believe I had that right. Yeah, so people setting off will get the extra impact. And your friendly infantry tribes regiments are now affected by the tempo. Shock was better. To an extent, Shock is super good because Shock also happens before impact. Giving you extra impact is nice, but since I'm not going to get buffed to my stat, it's not quite as good. If you're getting the +1 comparatively, that will make your impacts much more consistent. Although this has a higher ceiling, but that has a higher floor. And personally, I look more for the midline than the spike. So, and either way, it actually only affects tribes. So if you're taking him, you're really pushing to take those tribe units. You have a decent amount of tribe units, but I don't know if they're going to be some of the big mainstays. So overall, he's fine. I'm not super thrilled with either of their supremacies personally, but I think the Chieftain's pretty solid, and the Matriarch, obviously with a bit of healing, is solid as well. Not like amazing, but they're solid. I think those are the only characters. I think everyone else is a speaker. Oh, and he's Colts instead, which makes sense. He's a Zion of Conquest. All right, when we get to, in this particular video, taking a look at, we're not going to be going really through the artifacts. I'll talk about them briefly, but I've only really been doing the ones that are locked away. We'll probably talk about these more when we do an overall view of the faction. The big thing is, we know they redid artifacts and masteries and all those sorts of things. They essentially have streamlined, in many ways, those to have less options, or to at least have them be more locked on. So the big thing when you take a look at the first bit, instead of banners, they're now cult artifacts. They are effectively what you had before, although now they're locked to particular cults. So one for each of the cults. They tend to be cheaper. Their abilities similar or similar-ish, although not exactly the same sort of thing. But you have somewhat similar for a few of them. Death's Gaze is reasonably similar as a giving you impact. War of the Tribe is a bit different, but all of them have changed a little bit, but they're all essentially cheaper. So for the moment, though, we're going to skip over that as well as masteries, because all those sort of things don't actually work with any of the things that we actually want to talk about. So for the moment, at least, we're going to skip that stuff. We'll be doing another one later to talk about it. So don't worry, if you want to hear thoughts on it, we'll get to all of that. All right, decent amount of tribes units. Not tons of them, but it's essentially your normal guys. So taking a look at Braves, they went up by 10 points. They did not... attacks actually went up by 1. So 10 points for an extra attack per stand. Pretty good. Although the resolve went up. Actually, extra resolve is actually very, very big. They lost Bloodlust, which Bloodlust was essentially removed overall because not being able to control your unit is pretty garbage tier. And personally, I don't remember any times when my Bloodlust units actually got the charges coming off the battlefield. From off the battlefield, I should say. They got shield. They still have support too. They are still 35 points each, but you get your standard bearer for free. Your aberration now is the officer that you can take. So they used to not get their champion, or a champion, and they used to have to pay for the standard bearer. So aberration. Let's take a look at the aberration, because I do not know that. Oh, the only officer. That's nice and simple. This regiment adds 1 additional enchant marker belonging to its cult. Your chants are useful. What I'm hoping we're going to see more is that I care more about the units than I did in the past, because the chants aren't they're now more of to help the scrape rather than, the giant band-aid that they used to be. So, yeah, you have your leader standard bearer for free now. Before, yeah, they just had the leader. So, if you liked Braves before, Braves are better now because you get an extra attack, you have an extra resolve, you've lost Bloodlust, which is helpful as well, but you are spending at least 10 more points to start with. If you did like them before, those are things I would spend those points for. But I don't know. I'm not sure if I saw tons and tons of them. Partly we're going to see in some of these, they removed the wide variety of command models. That has really, really been streamlined down, which I think overall is pretty good. Although that does take out some of the options of what you used to be able to do. Not so much then, but when you take a look at Blooded, Blooded used to have tons of options. Now that you don't have those options, you are limiting a good bit more of to what this unit can do. Because it used to be able to have various bonuses that could help it in a lot of useful ways. If we just take a brief look at it. So Champion used to be able to, for that 20 points, I think it was 20 points, in the Braves unit, everyone could get +1 attack. So you are saving about 10 points, and you are getting better stats, so that helps. But you used to be able to take Tracker, get Flank, and Fiend Hunter. You no longer have that in your Blooded options now. Used to be able to, I think they could take Skirmisher, so some extra March and all. I think they even had the aberrations. I think they had essentially all of it. You no longer have those sort of things. So, at least for the moment, what we've noticed they've done is greatly streamlined it. You now just have that aberration, which we just talked about, because both options have that aberration. Same amount for extra. They're 5 points cheaper. You're getting your standard, so you're getting your unstoppable rerolls. And they are 6. No, they're still a 6 attack, so these guys essentially didn't get the champion buff like the Braves did. That's fine. It doesn't inspire me in any particular way. Of the two, for what is now the same as at points, obviously you have to look at whether or not they're mainstay and stuff like that. There's some of those considerations, obviously. But you have a 3/3 unit or a 2/3 unit. 1 less attack over here with a shield. These guys have effectively no rules but an extra attack. Both sitting on Clash 2. Both rather ho-hum to me. I'd probably still go, if I kind of had to take a spot of this to get something I wanted to unlock certain choices, say unlock a restricted, I'd probably just go with Braves because they'll survive a little bit more because of the shield. And support means that I could run them like a 2 wide and go further back. I don't have to run like super wide to deal with it. So neither one of them are the Great Wondrous things to write home about, especially when we talked about. So in the past, the unit was okay, but if I get enough of this particular marker, I give them cleave 1. Now they do a lot. I can get them +3 on this maneuver. I can unbreak them and give them all these other bonuses. A lot of those extra bonuses are kind of gone now, which means we kind of have to look at the unit more for what it is. And what that one is a little underwhelming, I think, personally. Veterans got 10 points cheaper. They're sitting at 170 now, still 50 points a stand. They are the same move. They have actually the same stats. They get the free standard bearer, although before it was free as well. They used to be able to take a champion to get the extra attack. That's no longer a thing, but they didn't change their attacks either. Shields, which is fine, so you're really 3s and 3s. They can add that extra chant marker, so essentially they get a built-in aberration. So they don't get to choose one, but they pretty much have an aberration built in. But they actually can do Conquest. So the aberration does your cult. This one does Conquest as well. So you get a little bit of a difference there. We know for the character we talked about, he buffs veterans. So if you want to take them, you're talking about 40 extra points. You're on 6 wounds now, so you are gaining a wound. Your defensive stats are about the same, although you are at least going to get some bonuses there. And I know some of the items will change this around as well, but I kind of want to talk about the merits of the units before we talk about all the different alterations you can do based off of a character that you stick with the unit. That can make a unit better, but nothing should be able to take a unit from garbage tier to absolutely amazing just because of an item. If so, that item isn't good. Keep in mind your chieftain being here in his warband will give Vanguard to any of these units. So all of his mainstays can have Vanguard, and you can get Flurry on those veterans. So how many other people, if anyone, take veterans? That's the question. Okay, so Chieftain takes veterans. Thunder Chieftain, of course, takes veterans, so he doesn't buff them the same sort of way. So you have that option, and that's it. So if you're having to take a Chieftain, veterans are good, because getting Flurry on that, now at 170, sitting on a 3, possibly a 4 up to hit, re-rolling, now you're starting to get somewhere. You're not getting, and you do have an option at Cleave 1, because we know one of the chants can do that for you. So they got cheaper. I like them more than the other options. They are more expensive, but all sitting at mediums. If you have the spare points, I do kind of like veterans more, especially if I'm running a chieftain at all, and this is where I'm taking them. Otherwise, if I'm taking other spots, I'm trying to keep it probably cheaper with one of those other units. But I don't know. I wish I'd liked them more. I just, for whatever reason, I don't. Slingers. Let's get to some slingers. Actually, I'm sorry. I think I said before people said, I'll use it on these other things. I think it's actually slingers that they were talking about they were using it on for some of those chants. But slingers went down by 10 points. Still light, sitting at volley 3, which volley 3 on any ranged unit is always very, very good. They do actually have the standard bearer now for free, so you get a little bit of extra movement if you need that first round to get a little bit closer. That does put them up 13 inches with an 18-inch shot, which means now by turn 2, they're hitting just about anyone, depending on their range. They did lose a shot, though. They used to be Barrage 4, and they're now Barrage 3. When this regiment chants the battle cry, their entire barrage range counts as their effective range. That's why you do it. So you want slingers to have this. This is the first spot where we see this, where if they're the ones who chant, they get whatever that bonus is. But now they also get this. You're really wanting it because torrential fire, now you can have torrential fire at your full 18-inch range. Torrential fire, for those who don't remember, is for every 2 hits, you get 1 additional hit. They don't stack beyond that, but that does mean, okay, you are 1 less shot per, but if I can get the chant to go off, then we have this extra. Do they still cause the morale? Doesn't look it. You used to actually have to take some morale. You no longer have to take morale, which That's just a nice consistency. You do have a less shot, but you now could have your torrential fire at the full distance. Since to a large extent, I feel like you care less about your chance going on to a variety of your other units. I think it's more likely you could actually have the slingers have it. Plus, we saw those spots where you have aberrations, so you might be able to get some extra markers. If you're running veterans, you can have some extra markers, so it might be more consistent that you get it onto them. So far, the units we've seen, I do like the changes to these guys. The not getting the wounds does hurt them a bit. However, the consistency of this, that you then don't have to do that, because it's one of the few spots that breaks the rule. Now you don't have to worry about breaking. The range doesn't do morale. So, I like slingers. I like what they did for slingers. Warbred. Warbred might actually be the last one, I believe. They went down by 10 points. They are still the same move. Stats are sitting at the same, still on their 6 wounds. They lost Relentless Blows. I did have one of them punk a Rakshasa on me because of Relentless Blows. And as someone who plays Bone Golems, Relentless Blows is very, very good. The Cleave 2 is nice. The Impact 2 is good. I guess they thought Relentless Blows was just too much for what they got. And they're 5 points less per additional stand. Although I don't necessarily see you wanting to take bigger than 3. Maybe like 4. But not too much bigger. Though they do not have Juggernaut. This regiment's charge distance is always its march value plus 5, is not affected by the rules that would add or reduce it. Okay. So, you can't guarantee the long bomb 12-inch charge, but you do have an 11-inch charge at all times, so you are very predictable. I know I'm going to make those ranges. On a unit that doesn't have Unstoppable, it's nice. I said in the last video, I've had times when I need a 3 and I rolled a 1 and 2. I've had times even with Unstoppable where it doesn't quite work out. I now know exactly what I'm going to charge, and you can't change it, reduce it, alter it. I know I get to go 11 inches to make these charges. So, especially if I'm going against, if I'm teeing up against an opponent who has a 5 move, I can get into my guarantee charge range where they're going to end up needing that 6. So, do they hunt for it and hope they get it? Otherwise, I'm getting into them. So, I think losing Relentless Blows is tough, though. That's pretty rough, but knowing that you'll get those charges, there's been plenty of times where I'm looking at it, oh, do I try this? Oh, it's like a 5. And if I don't get it, I'm screwed because I'm going to be standing out in the open. No, now I'll have it. I will do, overall, you're probably going to do more wounds. You lose Relentless Blows, which only really helps on the ones, so on average, it's about 1 per guy. Because they have 5 attacks, 6 for the leader, so it's about 1 per. So about 1 extra hit per. Oh, and their clash is better. I apologize, I said their stat was the same. Their clash is better. They're so much better now. I'm sorry, I didn't see that their clash went from 2 to 3. 2s needs Relentless Blows because you're hitting so few. On 3s, 4s, if you've made that charge, which now you know exactly what your charge is, you're making up for it. Base 2 Relentless Blows is not better than 3s without it. Again, you could spike. Yes, I could roll the 5 dice and all of them are 1s. But statistically, about 1 of them is. But I'm hitting 16% better. So I'm getting on about 5, about 1 to maybe 2 more. So I like these guys. I like the change that they did. They got a little bit cheaper. They're much more reliable. And they kept the things that you cared about. Relentless Blows losing it, but extra clash, you more than made up for it. So Warbred, I greatly like Warbred. Not giant on the models personally, but that's me. I'm very particular about my orc type models. Yeah, that's actually the last unit. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, so tribes. The problem is, outside of the characters, most of the tribes are just very uninspired units. A lot of what they used to be able to do, or the reasons why when you looked at them, there's obviously, again, there's upgrades and weapons that could go into your characters, that go into these units, that could make them more entertaining. I'm avoiding that conversation for now, because that could be a huge conversation of what did you take in the past, what do you take now. But I just kind of want to judge the units as the units. The big thing is, things that you could do before are adding to charges. You could give a unit Relentless Blows if you're going in famine. So, okay, you know, you take any of these units, you give them Relentless Blows. Now you're changing a little bit there. You could get extra Impact and Glorious Charge. Sorry, it was only Fanatic. Although the Matriarch used to be able to hand out Fanatic, so there's possibilities of them having that. Lose Broken, +1 defense. So these units that are defense 3 used to be able to get up to potentially defense 4, or the 2s going to 3. Survivability used to be very, very big. What are they really doing now for extras? You are grabbing objectives a little bit better, because your command stands counting for extras, which, don't get me wrong, this is an objective-based game, and I'm working on a scenario, because they have that scenario thing right now, that I'm going to be trying to play into that more. 1 extra is nice. If that's the big push, I would have liked to see the Battle Cry do more than just 1 extra, maybe 2 extra, just to really push, because some of these other buffs used to be huge. The one now can, Conquest can take you +2 evasion to max of 2. Conquest tier 2 used to be +2 evasion max of 3. So they used to be more impactful. They're now less impactful. You have Slingers that have a very, very nice buff, and I think Slingers are going to want to get the Battle Cries. And Warbred do quite well with them. I also think, like I said, if you're taking Chieftains, then you are looking at Veterans to be able to get Flurry. You feel like you're relying less on your chanting. It's more of a nice to have, except for very particular units that want it in very particular times. Yeah, any of them would benefit from Cleave 1, of course, under War. But, I don't know. I think the tribes let me feeling, at least for the offset for the moment, kind of lacking, except for 2 of the units. And again, the characters I think are fine, but when we get to some of the other characters, I know that people like running other ones more. And or if they don't like running them more now, they liked running more of what they used to do before. Like getting shock for your infantry and monsters is huge. Your instant hit as well. Well, hey, I charge, I get all these bonuses now. I know that was a big change. I think that's probably a good change, because maybe that's just too much. But I can understand why, if you're a Wadrhun player, you're not as excited about what that change does to you. But I think that'll do it for the tribes. So we have the cults and the speakers left. I don't know which one you'll be seeing next. I don't know the order in which I'm going to record these, or the order in which I'm going to release them. But once we're done with this, we're going to be going through and talking about the factions overall, maybe a little bit here of strongest to weakest, doing that sort of thing. So we're going to get through all of this kind of stuff. There's also, I know, at least 1 or 2 battle reports I have to actually get on and sit in and work on. I've just been too busy to be able to sit. Those take me usually a couple hours to edit, and I haven't had the time to sit down and dedicate it once, because you do part of it and come back later. That don't work well. You really got to kind of do it all at once, at least the way that I edit. Keep in mind, like I said, if you want to pick up anything for Conquest, we have our discount code in the show notes. It's Train Kicker, saves you 10%, helps us out as well, especially here in this holiday season, because I either said in this video or the last one, it's a holiday season, everyone does a little something, and you might as well save a little bit of money for whoever deserves it. And that's allowed to be you. Unless you happen to have a family member or significant other who plays as well, which if so, hey, great. Probably. I don't know, my wife doesn't do war games with me. She does board games with me, but war games, I don't know if that would make things better or more contentious at some points. Probably depends on who'd win more often. But that's enough about that for the moment then. On behalf of everyone here at the show, has a good hobbying. It's a great gaming.